Uh, and without any further ado, it is my deep honor to introduce author and educator Tammy Peters. Tammy got things going with her BA in elementary education, and you minored in English, right, Tammy?
Correct.
From the University of Wisconsin in 1982. And she followed that up with an MA in reading from Cardinal Stritch University in Milwaukee, 1987. Tammy's teaching career was marked by elementary, undergraduate, and graduate work, and also work as a district reading specialist. Her school, the school that is near and dear to her heart, is Mars Hill Academy outside of Cincinnati, is a classical Christian school. She started there in 2000, retired in 2013. And recently moved to Minneapolis, Minnesota, where she's joining us from today, where she lives with her husband. And I guess I will share the details on your family because I think that you have a wonderful family. I'm sure you would like to too, but she has 4 grown children, all married, and 8 grandchildren. So a leader, a teacher, a mother, a grandmother, and we're thrilled to have you, Tammy. We're blessed by your presence today and thankful to have you talking to us about grammar. So the floor is yours, Tammy.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Joe. I cannot appreciate you enough because you really do. Your expertise is always, always appreciated. And thank you all for joining today. A look at grammar and well-ordered language. You know, I love working with fellow educators who want to study grammar, to understand how thoughts are formed and how to teach the next generation what a sentence is. And as Joe had said, the chat box is there for you. It's to help you. He's going to be plugging in different resources that are going to be helpful, either if you do teacher training yet this fall. Some of you are principals, some of you are curriculum directors, some of you are lead teachers. They're just literally checking out what well-ordered language. Those websites or those links are there for you to snag, and then you can show it in the fall if that's going to be helpful to you. Also, if you have any burning questions for your school or what would I do in this situation, please go ahead and put that in there. And also, I'm very excited. I'm seeing many of you put what school you are and where you're from. Please continue to add that. That helps me kind of gauge where in the country you all are. And also what levels. If your school is just starting with level 1, or you're going to do level 1 and level 2, or perhaps you're a school that's been doing for the last several years, you've done level 1 and level 2, and now you're in 3 or 4 for that matter. I'd love to know all that information. Well, let's get started. I want to share a curious picture with you. Now, Joe, do you have a screen share? Am I all set to go? Make it happen?
Sorry, I was muted there. You should be good to go, Tammy. Can you share?
Yep, here we go.
Great.
So let's get that over here. I want to share a picture with you. This picture is one that I feel represents thought. And you're like, what? Well, it sounds strange, but I took this picture actually when I'd never been to Italy before. And so my husband and I had gone, and we were in the Uffizi Gallery, which is in Florence. And this picture, believe it or not, was 20 feet above this, but in the eastern corridor, there were these panels all along the ceiling, 20 feet high. And I just literally was taking pictures of everything that snapped this one. And later discovered, looked at it going, this is a picture of thought, or of a sentence for that matter. It's just so varied. And yet, it did not make a lot of sense to me. And you know, I had those little earbuds in, and I was listening to Rick Steves, and he sat and enlightened my understanding. And what he did was he first talked through the terminology. He sat there and explained that it was a fresco painting and the artist, and he explained that it was called a grotesque or something. I'm not an art history person, but he was explaining what kind of art it was. And he explained the language and the terminology that helped me get a better sense of what I was seeing. And then he proceeded to go ahead and explain the logic of it. Now, he didn't call it logic, but that's what he was doing. He began giving the secrets of how it was set up. See this X here? I think this is so interesting. These X's were in all of these panels. They were darker. Some were done in different ways, but they were definitely, you could see an X. And of course, you had the circle in the middle. And if you look carefully, there's sky. Not all of them had sky, but many of them did. And then this other outer ring, ended up showing and making you feel that it was a dome, when in all actuality, it was a shallow roof or a shallow ceiling. In fact, this same painting could have been done on a flat ceiling. It's all an illusion that it's more rounded. It's the structure. But what really fascinated me is when I went through it and Rick Steves was explaining all these little characters. Okay, so you see these little scenes right here. These scenes were just that. They were sublime scenes. They were biblical scenes. They were historical scenes. Some of them were really even whimsical. But they were scenes that were happening in the day. And they were often gods or goddesses. Here's Pan. This is Apollo. And they were, Greek mythology was swirling around this, let alone the Cupids and the different mythical creatures. But the one that caught my greatest attention, it actually still makes me giggle, is this little one over here. This little Cupid, and look at what he has a billow. I don't know if you can see it clearly enough here, but it's the billow that's used when you're doing ironworks. He's at the incense altar, I'm guessing, or the incense urn, and he's blowing. But this one, there's something else in his hand. And if you look at this one, there's another one. The other one that's kitty corner is, you see, he's got an urn and he's actually pouring water on it and putting it out. So there was humor within this whole wall or ceiling of a painting. And if you were really dubious, some of you are watching, you already counted the 6 birds. In fact, there were birds hidden in throughout all of this picture. See, then, so when I was listening to Rick Steves, he told me the terms and the language and the vocabulary that I needed to know. He explained my structure, the logic of the symmetry of this picture, but truly taught me to enjoy what I was seeing. And the construction then of this is that once I understood this and saw it and appreciated it, I saw the next panel and saw all these pieces come together. Panel after panel after panel after panel. It was replicated over and over again. And I thought, wow, isn't this so much like thought or like a sentence? A sentence. See, that's what I want to do today. I am going to go ahead and bring out in well-ordered language. We sit and I have taken the aspect of thinking. If language is the vehicle by which thoughts are known, then we must understand how if language is the vehicle by which thoughts are known, then we must understand how thoughts are formed. And if grammar is the structure of language, then we must understand what grammar is. That being said, if a complete thought is a sentence, then we must understand what a sentence really is. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to look at, I'm going to break this workshop into 4 sections. And this will hopefully help you understand well-ordered language better. As I'm thinking through what is thought, I'm going to think of it as what is the language of a sentence? What is the logic of a sentence? What is the lesson of a sentence? And what is the construction of a sentence? That's kind of how I'm breaking it up. The language, the logic, the lesson, and the construction. So as I began pondering some of these questions, what is grammar? What is thought? What is a sentence? I began pondering these in 2000. As Joe said, I joined the staff at Mars Hill Academy in Cincinnati, Ohio. It's a classical Christian school there. And as we joined the staff, it was in its infancy. Truly, we didn't know, I mean, we knew what we could know at that time. A lot of things we knew. A lot of classical Christian schools were in their infancy. A lot of even publishing companies were in their infancy, and there wasn't a lot of curriculum. In fact, we modeled all of our curriculum after another ACCS school that we trusted and respected. But after a few years, we began to ask the hard questions. We began asking, how do you teach classically? And how do you go beyond what you're looking for? Not just the what in learning, but the why. How do you train a student to think? So especially in grammar, I began wondering, because we were using Shirley Grammar, and for me it was great. I began with Shirley Grammar. It was foundational, even though I'm a minor in English. I don't know about you, but I was never trained in grammar. I didn't understand grammar, so with a minor in English, I still didn't have the wherewithal with grammar. So Shirley Grammar, in one sense, helped me get into the what of grammar. But as I was in this time of quandary, the why was missing. I began seeing in my students that they could answer the what, the subject noun. They could see parts of a sentence, but they didn't see how they connected. The relationship part was missing. They couldn't tell me what the principal elements were. I couldn't tell you what the principal elements were. And this is where I began my quest. Again, we were trying to figure out the why. So at this time, I was introduced to Harvey's grammar, Thomas Harvey. He was a grammarian in the late 1800s. He, like many of the grammarians of the day, didn't just care about the what, he cared about the why. He actually got into the logic of sentence, or actually the logic of thought. What is put into a sentence, and why is it there? And can you substantiate it? It became a fascinating study. I was actually kind of a little geeky there because I was collecting grammar books. And I read them and reread them to try to understand, why did they set them up this way? What is this thing? And I kept seeing this commonality of this choral analysis that was built in. Very much like Shirley Grammar, but different. And the difference was the why. So you would identify something in it, but there was a why. So it was a predicate nominative. Why? Well, because it renamed the subject. There was this component that as the students were learning and rehearsing and understanding, they began to understand the components. The other key thing that I was finding is that the terminology was part of all learning. So you didn't just know that it was an adjective. You needed to know that it was an adjective and what an adjective was, so you could give a clear, tight definition. Vocabulary became critical in these old primers. So to make a long story short, I began teaching as I was the third grade anchor at Mars Hill Academy. I always, each year, they would say, Tam, I want you to teach third grade, and then I want you to also teach a fourth grade grammar. So I began writing, taking Harvey's grammar, using this as like a backbone and making it for moderns, because it's really written like a Latin or a Greek primer. So it's, for us moderns, it's just kind of a little bit on the awkward side. So I translated it so modern grammar kids could learn it. So I wrote it in third grade. They had me teach a fourth grade the next year. Still third grade, ran over to fourth grade, taught the grammar, and began writing the fourth grade grammar. And then I proceeded to, depending on the year, I would go to second or go to fifth. And I began getting this continuity of a grammar program that was birthed from this quest of understanding not just the what, but the why. And during this time, I discovered really key elements in teaching. And perhaps you do this in your schools, but the multimodal aspects of teaching grammar. See, the students would see a sentence, they would say the sentence, they would hear the sentence, they would kinesthetically mark the sentence, and then they would see the relationships. In the beginning, it was just that kinesthetic, that writing, and that analytical piece. But then they began diagramming and seeing literally a picture of the thought. So I took this and I began thinking, and again, to fast forward, as I began writing well-ordered language, I took all that I learned at Mars Hill and applied it. So well-ordered language gets at the language of a sentence. Learning the language of language is the key to learning. You know that. So when they understand grammatical terms and solid text critical definitions of those grammatical terms, these are called memory pegs. This is the building block for learning. And then the other key element in grammar that must be taught are the 8 parts of speech. As simple as that sounds, the 8 parts of speech are those memory pegs that all the rest, they're actually the categories of understanding grammar. They're the 8 categories of all words fall in one of those 8 categories or those 8 parts of speech. Critical. This was absolutely revolutionary for me as an educator, but then infused in well-ordered language. So because once you begin to understand the language of a sentence, to understand the structure of thought, it begins to make sense. As I said, I also learned at this time that you need to know and teach and review. Know, teach, and review. Terms. We began to sing. I sang. In fact, what I did was, and I kind of picked up on Shirley Grammar, they sang their songs, but for me personally, as an educator, I didn't like a definition that was floating all around. When I wanted a definition, I would be teaching and I'd say, so what is a noun? I wanted them to tell me directly. I didn't want to give me a lot of baggage words. Children will learn anything you want to teach them. This is their frame, especially in 3rd grade and 4th grade and even 5th grade. They will sing, they will chant, they will do this because they are told to. This is part of learning. They grow. They pick up things faster than we do. That being said, what is going to be the things that you're going to have them chant? I mean, that's a side note. I mean, I'm talking grammar today, but I want you to be thinking that if you're going to be teaching anything, your definitions must be tight so that the students are not still trying to wade through this little noun that's floating all around, and then you're trying to get through. Just tell me that it's one of the 8 parts of speech. Tell me that it names the person, place, or thing. Keep it tight. That being said, we would sing and chant and move and rehearse and delightfully interact with the material every hour when I taught grammar. Or actually it wasn't a full hour, but I would come in and we would dance and sing. And remember I told you before that I was writing the curriculum over grade levels. That was a huge, big piece. And again, I'm speaking to schools right now. So if you're thinking this out, many times you can know so well your grade level, but not seeing where they have come from or where they are going. And what I found, again, being small little Mars Hill at the time, we began realizing the blessing, the wisdom of whatever a definition was in 2nd grade. It was carried the same definition in 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade. So we didn't necessarily, we sang it all the way through. We chanted it all the way through. But what we did in 2nd grade was far different than what we did in 6th grade. What we did in 2nd grade was different than in 4th grade. The depth of what even a noun is. In 2nd grade, we can learn that names a person, place, or thing. Great. But to learn the complexity in 6th grade that a noun in its place in a sentence could even be a noun clause and it's behaving just like a noun. The complexity is great, but how do you build it? From the language of a sentence, language of the terminology, starting it slow, building slowly. So simply stated, well-ordered language, level 1A and 1B is beginning grammar. So if you think of it that way, beginning grammar. It's like if you think, as I'm saying these, I want you to think of Greek or Latin, okay? Beginning Latin. What do they do? Amo, amas, ama. You're learning just the basics. Level 1A and B is beginning grammar. Level 2A is intermediate grammar. Level 3A and B is advanced grammar. And level 4A and B is intensive grammar. So you're thinking Latin, Latin 1, Latin 2, Latin 3, and Latin 4. And the complexity of Latin 4 is exactly what we're going to be doing. That complexity is that intensive grammar. So what are we talking about? All right, so I've talked about the importance of the language of a sentence, or the terminology of understanding that. That's inherent. That's a key component of well-ordered language. But the logic of a sentence? Now the logic. This is truly the gem of of Harvey's work and the grammarians of the time. They looked at the logic of a sentence by doing the analytical approach, or the analytical taking part of a sentence. The analytical approach became the heart of well-ordered language. See, Harvey's dealt with the logic of thought, or the structure around thought. He taught students to identify and explain the reasoning behind the placement of each word. So this is what became the heart of well-ordered language. Now, many of you probably have a well-ordered language text. And if you've flipped open to any of them, if you've paged through it, you'll find this script. And you're thinking, well, what is this? And some of you are already doing it, and you're so thankful I have put that script there, because it's helping you see how it goes. What I want to do right now is I'm going to actually demonstrate how one of those scripts sound. And then we're going to work through it. And then you can begin to understand, this is what makes this different. Okay, so here we go. I'm gonna go ahead and show you one of our sentences. Here we go. I'm gonna share again. All right, so let's get started with, let's pull this up. It's a little bit large here. Let's see. Let's go to this one. And thanks for being patient. Sometimes the little things, you can see where we're going to be going. Let's go there. All right. If we had a sentence, I'm going to take through 2 sentences. Now, a side note here. Some of you are educators and already your hearts are trepidating because we are in a pandemic. And in one respect, that is absolutely frightening and terrible, and we are very prayerful in this. And all over the country, we're feeling this. But in the same respect, all of us would not be able to meet today if it were not for our ability to Zoom. Well, in this case, I have learned some great new skills that I had never had before. I guess I had Word, and I didn't realize that I had, so you've got your normal home in Word, that it has this component draw. Maybe you all knew this before. It was like, it blew my mind. I have the capabilities in my sentences that I can analyze now electronically with sentences with my class, just by pressing draw, hitting draw, and then choosing my marker. So I'm going to analyze this sentence. And if you were my class, this is how I would analyze a sentence with you. So I'd have all my little students as saying. So again, analyzing a sentence, I'm taking it apart, I'm analyzing it. As this script is going forward, I want you to hear both the what and the why I will be doing it. This particular sentence, I would probably use at the end of 1B. I could, as well as this would be at the end of 2B. So let's go ahead and see where we go with this. So we were looking everywhere for my house keys. The order of analysis of phrases, clauses, principal elements, modifiers. Students, are there any phrases? The class would go, yes, ma'am. What would it be? For my keys are prepositional phrase. For is the preposition. Keys is the object of the preposition. House tells us which keys. So house is an adjective element because it modifies a noun. It is an adjective. My tells us whose keys. So my is an adjective element because it modifies a noun. It is an adjective. We were looking everywhere for my house keys. This is a sentence because it's a group of words that express complete thought. This is a declarative sentence because it makes a statement. This sentence is about we. So we is the subject because it is what the sentence is about. This sentence tells us that we were looking. So looking is the predicate, because it is what the sentence tells us about we. It is a predicate verb because it shows action. There is no linking verb because predicate verbs do not need linking verbs. Were is the helping verb because it helps the verb. For my house keys tells us why we were looking. So for my house keys is an adverbial element because it modifies a verb. It is an adverbial prepositional phrase. Everywhere tells us where we were looking. So everywhere is an adverbial element because it modifies a verb as an adverb. Now, as you see, as we went through this, you heard, you could see visually that we were looking, just by looking at this, our principal elements. It's marked above, it's capitalized. S stands for subject, PV, predicate, verb. In the course of going through, you'll learn how simple our language is. Grammar is very simple in that there's only 3 predicates: predicate verb, predicate adjective, and predicate nominative. Now in level 1, all you worry about is predicate verb or the action verb. You learn that it's a transitive verb and an intransitive, but really the category is verbness as being a predicate verb. Predicate nominatives and predicate adjectives begin in level 2 and moves forwards because it has a linking verb. That being said, a student, you or the students, can see quickly after you mark it what was the sentence about. Now again, this sentence is not a hard sentence, it's a quite simple sentence, and the only noun in the whole sentence really is keys. So if I wanted to say what's the noun in the sentence, what is the sentence is about, if you were trained that it's the noun, well obviously keys is not what the sentence is about. But it's the pronoun here, isn't it? We. Pronouns are just substitutes. They're substitute teachers or substitute coaches, right? What we're missing is who the antecedent is. All this kind of language and what we're talking about, even what I'm doing with you right now, you do after you go ahead and analyze it. Because now you have things by which you can talk from. If you think of this as, here are my adjectives, right? Both my and house is describing keys. And yet we also have, those are adjective elements, right? And we have adverbial elements. I don't know if you heard when I said this. It's an adverbial element because it modifies a verb. It's an adverbial prepositional phrase. Did you catch that? Because I said everywhere tells us where, so it's an adverbial element because it modifies a verb and it's an adverb. See, in the very beginning in level 1, you're just starting in the waters. You're learning that categorical language for the students and that you don't know that you're building. And sometimes as a 3rd grade teacher, at least I did even in the beginning, I only thought 3rd grade. And I thought, oh, why do we have to say all that? It's an adverbial element. Why can't I just say everywhere is an adverb and be done with it? I didn't realize that I was building for the future because that category of adverbness, that category of an adverb is shown here as just a one word. But here, all of this is behaving like an adverb. And so you're building. So by level 2, you're learning relative clauses. By level 3, you're learning about adverbial clauses. And they behave like what? An adverb. Each year you're building, building, building. So that being said, this is again, end of level 1B. A student would be able to analyze that. All that script is. What if you do if you have a sentence more like this? Okay. If you had a sentence like, the neighbors found them in the backyard. Okay, so by the way, just as a side note, we were looking everywhere for my house keys. The neighbors found them in my backpack that had an extra pocket. There's like a little story going on, not real creative, not really exciting, but there is this element of story. See, sentences don't exist out of nothing. They are within a thought. So we've got a thought, but a thought is joining to another thought, which is telling something. In well-ordered language, every lesson, every time that you're analyzing a sentence, there are 3 or 4 sentences. They're telling something. Please don't shortchange yourself. Enjoy. Talk about it. Talk about when you lost your house keys or whatever the case might be. So our first sentence, so for here, just giving the context, we're talking about keys because this is going to apply to them there. So here we go. If I had a sentence such as this, I want you to hear the complexity between the year. The neighbor found them in my backpack that had an extra pocket. So if I was going to analyze it, the order of analysis are phrases, clauses, principal elements, modifiers. Are there any phrases? Yes, ma'am. What would it be? In my backpack is a prepositional phrase. In is the preposition. Backpack is the object of the preposition. My tells us whose backpack. So my is an adjective element because it modifies a noun. It is an adjective. That had an extra pocket tells us, that had an extra pocket is a clause. That is the, this clause is about that. So that is the subject because it's what the clause is about. That tells us that had. So had is a predicate because it is what the clause tells us about that. It is a predicate verb because it shows action. There is no linking verb because predicate verbs do not need linking verbs. Pocket tells us what that had. So pocket is an objective element because it completes the meaning of the action verb. It is a direct object because it tells us what that had. Extra tells us which pocket. So that extra is an adjective element because it modifies a noun. It is an adjective. And tells us how many pockets. So and is an adjective element because it modifies a noun. It is an adjective. Now, just want to say real quick, listen how I'm going to change it. This, at this point in the script, I'm going to shorten it. Listen. The neighbor found them in the backpack that had an extra pocket. This is a sentence and it's declarative. This sentence is about neighbor. So neighbor is the subject because it is what the sentence is about. This sentence tells us that neighbor found. So found is the predicate because it is what the sentence tells us about predicate. It is a predicate verb because it shows action. There is no linking verb because predicate verbs do not need linking verbs. Them tells us what neighbor found. So them is an objective element because it completes the meaning of the action verb. It is a direct object because it tells us whom or what they found. That had an extra pocket tells us which backpack. So that had an extra pocket is an adjective element because it modifies a noun. It is an adjectival clause or a relative clause. In my backpack tells me where the neighbor found. So in my backpack is an adverbial element because it modifies a verb. It is an adverb. The article adjective. Now, I hope you heard between their 2 times some of the little short nuances that are definitely changed. You still got our principal elements, okay? Neighbor, found, right? And we also have our, did you hear? We got our adjectival elements, an extra what pocket, but all of this is modifying the noun backpack. This is so fascinating. Again, that had an extra pocket is behaving. It's a wannabe. It's behaving like an adjective. It's telling about my backpack. And of course, we have in my in my backpack, ooh, is an adverbial element because it modifies the verb. And yes, I heard some of you say this. She forgot to write preposition. It's true, I did. This is an adverbial element and it modifies a verb. So did you hear, you see here, we've got adjective elements, all right, just an adjective alone, a preposition, and a clause all within one sentence. These are the kind of things that your students are doing at the end of level 2A and 2B. Actually, I should say 2B. So if we look carefully, here we go. We're also learning how to diagram sentences. And I share that with you because, again, it's a picture. It's a picture to help students understand what's going on. So you've got your principal elements. You have here, here's that relative clause, right? And it's modifying backpack. And of course, you have your adverbial clause. Again, it's a picture of what happened as the neighbor found. So we go from this point, let's go back there, okay. Well-ordered language. It's so fascinating, the series, beginning grammar. Now, I know you know your third graders better than I do, or your fourth graders. I have level 1A and B can be done in third or fourth grade. I've had a school that started in fifth grade. That's not the issue, it's beginning grammar. And even in that cases, your student's ability to speak outpaces your ability to analyze. That goes without saying. They've never had grammar before. They don't know how to analyze. So but they're able to speak and carry on. In fact, many times their sentences go on and on and on and on, and they don't know where to stop them, for that matter. A student at the beginning of the year may not have a clue how words behave in a sentence, but at the end they have confidence. They understand the logic that there are principal elements and subordinate elements. His initial thoughts are scattered, and by the end they begin to write with clarity and think with clarity and identify with clarity. Intermediate grammar, again, your fourth grade, perhaps your fifth grade, could be even your sixth grade, intermediate grammar. Here, your students' ability to think and analyze begin to emerge. The students build on what they've learned in level 1, plus they are learning the diagramming, the picturing of a thought. By the end of level 2, they are able to identify relative clauses, which I just showed you, and the level of sophistication is emerging even in their writing. Advanced grammar. Here you've got fifth grade or sixth grade. I've even had seventh grade doing advanced grammar here. The students' ability to create language. Here the students have an ability to create language that is beautiful and is structured. Since grammar is the authority or the structure around thought, the students gain their confidence and begin to lean into their grammar for direction. Now, intensive grammar, this is for your sixth grade on up. The students' ability to not only think and to analyze their language, but command their language in writing begins. Their level of understanding gives them confidence in knowing the what and the why and the how, and even the when, and even the where. Grammar today is often taught as an afterthought or as an editorial tool. But here, grammar is viewed with logic behind its thought. So, I've talked about the language of a sentence and the logic. We just saw how to analyze and diagram the logic behind a sentence, how words relate and respond to one another. But in well-ordered language, what's the lesson of a thought? Okay, in other words, how do we teach this? Well, first of all, each chapter is set up in sections, obviously. And in the sections, you're going to open up. And if I opened up a book, you couldn't even see it right now. But if I opened up a book, you'd see the picture first. In levels 1, 2, and 3, those pictures are keyed into the first 2 paragraphs. In the first 2 paragraphs of every chapter, there's an analogy. And then there's also a literary example. So these analogies are dotted throughout the whole book. In other words, each book has an analogy that's working under. Level 1 is a guidebook, okay, very much like a guidebook for understanding bugs, insect book. When you know that as a guidebook, it's identifying the what and then even like why. Okay. Well, each chapter has done the same thing. There's an analogy. What is a direct object like? Well, the direct object is the other side. It's the transitive verb is that bridge. Okay, so I'm using an analogy to help them visualize. You know that as educators. We always teach from the known to the unknown. And that's what those first 2 paragraphs are. Then there's a whole section called Ideas to Understand. Ideas to Understand is just that. What you're doing is understanding both as a student and as an educator. As I said, most of us today were never schooled in how to teach grammar. And so we're a little shaky sometimes. We try, but we don't know everything. We knew what a noun was, but the depth and complexity, I haven't gotten that far yet. Well, so if you look at this, you're going to have a good, rich, solid explanation. In the teacher's edition, you're going to have a side column, and it's going to have from the sideline. Kind of imagine a coach. I think of my kids when they were playing soccer, the coach would always yell things from the sideline, get to that position, or look to the left, or they were yelling something that helped the players on the field do their job better. That's what From the Sidelines is all about. I'm helping you come alongside. Here's a little tidbit. This is what another grammarian thinks, something that will help you do your job better. Terms to remember, I've already talked about the importance of the language of instruction, the language of grammar, sentences to analyze, and diagram for that matter. That's going to be a whole section. I'm going to do a sentence for you and your students to know exactly what to do and how to diagram. Every chapter has lessons to learn. Now, if you're in level A, you're going to have also what's called an introductory lesson, and you're going to have a review lesson. But levels 2, 3, and 4 have lesson A, B, and C. Plus, they have what's called 10 sentences. It's within the text or in your PDF. These 10 sentences are a gift to you. They were birthed out of my classroom. When we were learning the script, and again, level 1, your goal is to learn that script and know it well. So 2, 3, and 4, you can drop it and you know it inherently. So I found sometimes, we'd be learning direct objects and they're just getting that, it's a direct object. This tells us what, so what is the, and getting those words right. So how do I do it? How can I reinforce it? That's what 10 is. So when the students need to practice how to do a script, we do the 10 sentences. And then the best part, again, this has probably happened to you in the classroom as well, you've developed something like the 10 sentences, and then it became this touch point that you had on hand all the time. So these 10 sentences I used for relays in my class. I had a front board and a back board, whiteboards. I divide my class in half, and I would have a relay. They had to go to it. I'd use the sentences that were on that sheet, and I'd had all the class. I said, quickly, all of you go ahead and do the sheet. So they would analyze the sheet. Then the relay was to go up, and who could ever do a sentence, analyze a sentence neatly and correctly. So if you were the first student, you flipped around, you got a point. But if the other student flipped around and did it correctly, they would get a point. So you get a point, you could get up to 2 points. So the person that would jumped around first, they could have done it quickly but incorrectly. So they only got 1 point for speed, but they got a point for accuracy if they got it for that. That being said, those 10 sentences became a hinge point of doing many, many different things. Sometimes it was used for remedial, and then of course, you all have them. I know you do. That one student that loves grammar more than anything else and asks for more homework, this is what you give them. Then there's lesson to enjoy. This has a poem or a fable. And why I said one or the other, because in the student's edition, you're going to have a poem or a fable. But in the PDF, in the teacher's edition, you're going to have the opposite. So every chapter has a poem and a fable. All right? But in the student, they only get one, not both. I have that in your back pocket. Perhaps you need an extra activity. You need another poem. It's in the PDF. You can print it out and you can go ahead and use it. That being said, if you do the fable, there are 10 sentences that are cued or keyed right to that fable. How delightful is that? So the 10 sentences actually tell a story of a fable. Now, each lesson, okay, so now that we've talked about what's in a chapter, okay, chapters have all these components. They have the analogies, they have the ideas to understand, they have terms to remember, and a sentence to analyze, lessons to learn, and lessons to enjoy. You're going to have it And sometimes there's bonus. There's an extra puzzle. There's an extra, some kind of word puzzle thing that's going to work in there. Sometimes even little recipes that can be brought in. That's what's in each chapter. But what does a lesson look like? Okay, so again, if I'm thinking of the lesson to a lesson of a sentence, how is each lesson set up? Well, each lesson, whether you're level 1 or level 4, you're always going to review. You're going to review that language. And as I said before, you are singing, you are chanting, you're jumping up and down. It's the frame of the child. When I did prepositions, I marched around the classroom. I did. They marched with me. It was so invigorating. I think it got their blood rolling. I always managed to get scheduled having grammar after lunch. That was kind of hard. So we did a lot of movement. Review was the time to do it. Practice it. Practice it is always in your teacher's notes. It's a quick interchange of learning. Sometimes it's a play off each other. Sometimes it's I am literally walking around the room asking a quick question. I'll give you the subject, you give me the predicate, give me an adjective for that sentence. It's just a quick interchange. Sometimes it's a board. Quick, I need someone to go up and write a diagram in this sentence. Or it's an activity. This is where the learning is happen. It's free form. It's activating the mind. We used to call it, as a reading specialist, your schema. You're alerting, waking up. We are doing predicate nominatives today, and this is a reinforcing activity. Analyze it and diagram it. This next section is going to be what you're teaching. You are going to put a sentence up. In level 1, you have 2 sentences that are just there to reinforce the structure of how to analyze. Remember, your goal is analyzing. In levels 2, 3, and 4, you analyze and diagram. It's the first sentence on your lessons to learn sheet. And then again, lessons to learn sheet is just that. Now, I have learn it here. If you're in level 1, you'll have a learn it section. What this basically is a reinforcement of a particular skill that I'm teaching within that chapter. In levels 2, 3, and 4, it's embedded in the whole lessons to learn. Now, again, as I'm going to just do, each lesson is set up with these 4 parts. I can tell you right now, if I walked into your classroom, this is what I did at Marcel all the time. They said, Tam, could you come teach my grammar? I want to see you how you do predicate nominatives. I would set up my lesson exactly like this. I knew the structure of my lesson. I always reviewed it. I always practiced it. I always taught it. I always did my sheet. It was a structure I could work with. I plugged in the language that's going to be applicable to predicate nominatives. My practice it would be an activity that would reinforce predicate nominatives. My analyze and diagram, of course, would be teaching predicate nominatives, and the lessons to learn is that page. So, so many things. Now I have to show you, because it is COVID, and we are dealing with this, I wanted to show this challenge diagram. This challenge diagram in level 4, actually 4B, you can see it right here. You can see I would have at the end or in the midst of that chapter a challenge. Students are able to do this sentence. These challenge diagrams are either tongue twisters, or maybe they're poems, or they're whimsical little sayings. How would you diagram that whimsical saying? How would you diagram? So here it is. If a doctor decides to doctor another doctor, does the doctor who decides to doctor the doctor in the doctored way? All right. You're saying, what? Yes, it's a tongue twister. But does that even make sense? How do I know it makes sense? Well, this is the beauty of understanding and using the tools of learning. How would I take this apart? Well, of course, like anything, the order of analysis. I would find all prepositional phrases first. In fact, if you heard when I'd say the order of analysis, the phrases, clauses, principal elements, modifiers, you heard me say that. Phrases. When you analyze, you always look for phrases first. In level 1, you don't realize that this is going to touch in level 4. See, yes, you know prepositional phrases. In the doctored way is a prepositional phrase, right? But to doctor another doctor, that's not a prepositional phrase. It may start with, it seems like a preposition, but is it? Oh, this is an infinitive phrase. And the heart of every infinitive, actually the heart of every verbal, is a verb. So infinitives, gerunds, and participles such as this one, the heart of it is a verb. And the students are now picking them out. So this is actually an infinitive phrase. Doctor here is acting as a direct object. Here, once more, to doctor the doctor. Again, the doctor here is acting as a direct object. You can't understand things like this unless you have level 1, level 2, level 3. So you build on this. So phrases, clauses. Okay, clauses here. If a doctor decides to doctor, that is behaving as an adverbial clause. Who decided to doctor the doctor is a relative clause. Do you see how exciting this is? So what the students have to work with now is basically, does the doctor, if I got rid of these, I've often told the kids, you can erase this part and it should have meaning. Does the doctor doctor the doctor? This kind of thinking, these tools help them figure it out. But you're saying, well, what about at the end of level 1? Now see, I want you to understand, when I was talking about in this, well-ordered language talks about the language of a sentence and the logic of the sentence and the lesson of the sentence. I want you to point you out of the construction of the sentence. At the end of 1B, you're producing well-structured sentences. Students should be able to write, does the doctor doctor the doctor, in a decent way. A student should be able to analyze this sentence. Again, taking your prepositional phrases out, helping them along in that way. They could do this. Again, you're building, you're constructing well-structured thought. By the end of 2B, once again, you're identifying your your prepositional phrases, and then your clauses. So you've got these two working together. You get rid of it. Does the doctor doctor? Who doctors well? Do you see here? We need the rest of the clause. The beginning. Does the doctor doctor? And even when I do something like that, okay, let's say I did do this. This is actually really good that I did this. I love doing things like this. So if this were true, right? And if I would go ahead and say this can be erased and the sentence should still stand, right? We believe this to be true. If I got rid of that, does that make sense? Does the doctor? What do you want to say? No, that doesn't make sense, whatever. That doesn't make sense. Where did I go wrong? Oh, did I include a prepositional phrase where it doesn't? Who doctors well. Wait a second, now this makes sense. Does the doctor doctor the doctor? Do you follow what I'm doing? I'm helping, equipping your students. The students are able to go ahead and go, that didn't make sense. This does make sense. When you get to something like level 3B, at the end of it, this is advanced grammar. Once again, you've got a adverbial clause, a relative clause, a prepositional phrase. You do have, you've got an infinitive here, you've got another infinitive, you've got a participle here. You're helping the students, does the doctor doctor the doctor? So when you do get something such as this, the students are able to do it. But again, I'm showing you the analyzing. This is called a challenge diagram. So this is what you're looking for. You're having the students take on something as complex as that tongue twister and make it. This is the construction of a sentence. This is taking it well built. Does it make sense? Will it float? Now, why you're asking yourself, why? Is this helpful? Well, you all know the beloved tale of the Hobbit. I want to share this with you because I feel that this, to me, is truly a delightful piece. It's using grammar and not just text or content. Just like that beautiful ceiling panel that I showed in the beginning. That was beautiful, but it was called thought. It was called a sentence. But how is it behaving? Look at this. There's 2 sentences. I just took it from chapter 8. Listen to this. They walked in single file. Do you hear what Tolkien's doing? Tolkien is using, it almost sounds like they walked in single file. They sound like they're standing in a line. We're really good at that these days, right? Our COVID lines. We know how to walk in single file. He stripped that sentence down to its bares as if you're standing in a single file. Now, this is the joy and the richness that you can bring. The structure of a sentence can convey the meaning. Like the next sentence. This next 5 lines is 1 sentence. The entrance to the path was like a sort of an arch leading into a gloomy tunnel made by 2 great trees that leant together, 2 old and strangled with ivy and hung with lichen to bear more than just a few blackened leaves. How snarly is that sentence? It's a Tolkien sentence, so it has to be good. How can we model this? What can we learn from this? It's a beautiful picture of exactly what is happening. It's backwards. It's hard to understand what's going on here. So we go ahead and take our tools of learning. We go back and find all our phrases. To the path, like a sort of arch. A participial phrase. Leading, there's a prepositional phrase, into a gloomy tunnel. By 2 great trees, strangled with ivy, with lichen. An infinitive phrase, to bear. We are loaded with the phrases. And we've got 1 clause that link together. But what is this sentence really about? The entrance was made and hung. The simplicity was easy to understand. But man, it was as twisted and as difficult to get through as this sentence was. The grammar was working for Tolkien here, and the reader didn't even realize it. See, that is where we're heading. Now, if you're done with level 1, you can do this with Little House on the Prairie. Whatever book you're reading, bring it back to where it is. You see, the joy of well-ordered language is you're taking just what we've learned, what we've talked about here today, okay? You know, so if language is the vehicle by which thoughts are known, then we must understand how thoughts are formed. And if grammar is the structure of language, then we must understand what grammar is. And that being said, if a complete thought is what a sentence is, then we must understand a sentence. Today I went through showing you what well-ordered language is in the language of a sentence, the terminology, vocabulary, the 8 parts of speech. I talked about the logic of a sentence, talking about the analysis, showing you how to do the analysis, doing the diagramming, the lesson of a sentence, the richness of the lessons, the narratives within it, how the chapters are set up, and how the lessons are set up, the analogies, the poems, and the construction of a sentence, of where we're going to. The construction of a sentence of building a well-ordered language. This is like our beautiful picture of thought. I should put it back up. We've walked through the gallery now. We see the brilliance, but now we understand it better. So if you have any questions, I am all excited to go ahead and field them.
Thank you, Tammy. I haven't seen any questions come in yet. Participants, if anyone wants to throw one in the chat box, we'll keep an eye out for them. And I'll ask you a question, Tammy,
Sure.
unless you have a thought you'd like to expand on.
Oh, I was just going to know, you go ahead if you have a question. If not, I'll be happy to entertain some.
We had our first one from Valerie. How would you adapt the curriculum to a once-a-week cottage school? So that was actually going to be sort of my question too, is how do we work with special scheduling for well-ordered language, or what are some of the scheduling nuances that this curriculum can tackle?
I think you have put that as a link, but in the early pages of well-ordered language, how to do lesson planning. I think that's a #1 question, whether it's a cottage school or whether it's a multi-grade district. The rationale still is, how do I teach this? How am I going to do this? How do I set up a lesson? In the early pages, it actually breaks it down into 3 different options. I'll talk about those first, and then I'll swing it back to the question. I have option A is having 4 days a week. Lessons should run about 30 to 40 minutes. It fits into a normal school day in that way. The goal is teaching grammar, and so it's 4 times a day. 4 times a week. Option B is 3 times a week, and then there's another option, which is option C, it's 5 times a week. Again, using that momentum of doing it in that way. And with the 5 times a week, I've seen schools do 1 week grammar 5 times a week, and then the next week they do writing. Okay, maybe rhetoric and writing or whatever your writing program is. And the next week we do the next chapter, 5 in a day, and then they kind of work their way through it that way. I've seen others have taken 4 times a week, and then that last day is the beginning of a writing, and they will do writing throughout the week, but that would be used in that same time period. And again, the 3 times a week would be shared with your writing, 3, 2, 3, 2, if that would be a priority or how your schedule would work. When you have a 1 or a 2 day, I know the university model has a 2 day a week instruction period, you're going to have the home educators work alongside you. You're going to do the heavy teaching on that level, that first day or that 1 day a week. You're going to teach the concepts, but you're going to expect your parents to be on board or your home educators to be on board to help teach this and say it. That being said, for whether a home educator or a classroom educator, CAMP has a training videos on how to do. So I've had many teachers thank me, and they said, oh, I'm so glad, now I know how it sounds. Now I know what it looks like. So you can click on and actually see the first sentence of those analyze it. Remember, I just talked about it in a moment. Analyze it sentences. I actually performed them, or I showed them, or I taught them in a video. So you can see how they sound as opposed to just reading it. That being said, that may be something you want to utilize. 1 time a week is a high stakes. It may be trickier. I would get your home educators on board to help do it at least 1 or 2 more times during the week before you see those students again. Any other questions that we're seeing here?
Yeah, thanks, Tammy. We have another one. One of our most common ones is how to transition incoming students mid-scope and sequence.
Yeah. That was my question I'm going to bring. I've had this. It was so interesting, and I share this from my own life experience at Mars Hill Academy. We began this. We started training and seeing the incredible fruit. In the beginning, level 1, just the understanding of terminology, building on level 2. But by level 3, this advanced grammar, we started having students come in that didn't have 1 and 2, and they were coming into 5th grade. They weren't going to go back. We're a school system. I can't play with the schedule. We were locked in. So what would end up happening is we would have a 2-week intensive prep in the summertime, and I would teach it, and it literally was intense. Every single day, I was hitting those categories. Again, categorical learning is the foundation of level 1. So those first 6 chapters are critical to understand. Okay, they need to know what principal elements are. They need to know what an adverb is. They need to know what an adjective is. They need to know what a direct object is. They need to know the prepositional phrases. These are critical pieces that they must learn. They need to sing those songs. They need to know those songs. They need to be familiar with analysis. When you go through that intensive prep, it's at least giving them a 1-up. Again, you're moving into Greek 3 or Latin 3. So they've got a foundation to step into your classroom. Now, this being said, each of the levels, whether it's level 1 or level 4, always goes back to the principal elements. Goes back to adjectives and adverbs. Goes back to direct objects. It goes back to, but the difference, it's the layer of learning. This is what makes it so exciting. This is what classical learning is all about. That you learn it in level 1, and by level 2, you're like, oh, I thought I learned that last year. Oh, I'm gonna learn a nuance. I'm gonna learn something more about it. I think it's in level 2, might be in level 3, where all of a sudden direct objects can actually start a sentence. What? And they've been trained. Actually, it's in level 3. It's advanced. It's learning all that they've learned. Now you can go ahead and do, I don't want to call the exceptions, but the nuance of our language that's richer. These are these aspects of learning. That being said, what do you do with these new students? There's an intensive prep. And I think, Joe, I think it's on the market soon, but CAP has an actual intensive prep. Your teacher, it's whoever teaches this need to know the grammar. So they're going to be teaching these new little students. You might want to take your level 2 teacher that teaches this, or a level 1 teacher that knows it well. If you are new to it, maybe you want to whip through, but you need to know it and know this process well. And again, I can speak from experience. I had a level 3 class, 5th graders, and I did this intensive grammar. And I had one little student that came in and picked it up like fish to water. You would never be wiser that he was not at Mars Hill the 2 previous years, okay? So in other words, he picked up, that's not always the case. Some, it takes it, but at least they step into the waters feeling more confident.
Thank you, Tammy.
Yeah.
We had a question about level 1.
Mm-hmm.
This is a good question. Why does level 1 not put dialogue more often?
Dialogue?
Yeah.
Do you mean diagram? Maybe diagramming.
I think diagram.
And again, correct me if I'm wrong. Please jump in if I'm not doing it. But level 1 does not do diagramming. Primarily, the biggest reason why is because the goal of level 1 is to understand and to know the analysis. In fact, schools, hear me on this. Level 1 starts with chapter 1, and it's just doing the 4 kinds of sentences. It's for you as a teacher as much as the students to begin to learn the script. So the students in unison, they have 2 weeks to do that chapter, for them to say in unison, to memorize, to it in their hard drive, this is a sentence. And you can almost say, why? But don't. This is a sentence because it's a group of words that express complete thought. This is a declarative sentence because it makes a statement. That's your goal. Or that it's an interrogative sentence because it asks a question. Or it's an imperative sentence because it gives a command. Or it's an exclamatory sentence because it expresses strong feelings. This is what your goal is, to teach them the script in chapter 1. Chapter 2, you say this sentence is about blank, so blank is the subject. I have one teacher at one of my schools that took the script, extracted the actual words. So they took out the thing and they had it up there on their podium. So any sentence you could put in the missing word. This is a sentence. This sentence is about X. So X is a subject because it's what the sentence is about. Just till she got it. The kids will pick it up so much faster than you will, or I will. It took, but once you get it and you keep building from it. So you go it slow and steady for your benefit. Script is important. Script is there. Your question is, why not diagramming in level 1? If you want to teach your class diagramming in level 1, do it. Okay, our main goal was to teach the analysis in level 1, 2 through 4. Now there is some research, I don't necessarily, it's whatever you want to do with it, that cognitively, the older they get, the picture aspect of it becomes easier for them. That's up to this debate. You know your students better than I do. If they can go ahead and say, that's not my class, we could diagram, in fact, it was easier for them. Do it. I think it's, again, but as well-ordered language goes, you're going to learn diagramming in 2. And we use the the Reed and Kellogg diagramming, which is standard.
Tammy, stay on the topic of diagramming. So a little bit of a 2020 themed question here. How, any advice, insight on how to handle diagramming virtually? Yeah. How to have a virtual conversation about diagramming and ushering students maybe into that era?
Yes, I know it. And again, I think our new normal, maybe not, hopefully, Lord willing, it won't be in the fall, but if we do move to virtual teaching, what I was showing you, that one piece with Word where I could click in. Again, I don't know what your schools are using. If you have capabilities of marking, or you have an electronic pen, you can do all your writing on your tablet, and you can diagram just as easily, and your students can, for that matter. If your students don't have the capabilities, again, to entertain different ways, as you're teaching it, you're going to need to have some way, whether or not, as you saw how I did it, I could do the analysis with my pen, but I was actually using my mouse. And it does take a little bit of the eye-hand coordination thing going there to make sure that I could do it. It is a little bit more squiggly if I did my mouse, and but I could have a blank slate and use my electronic through Word. I could do it that way. Again, I'm not savvy enough to know all the different web options out there on how to electronically do diagramming, but I do know it's capable. As I said, in the presentation that I did, I actually marked it, and then I flipped to a completed diagram. So what you could do is you could do that. You could do the analysis with the students, have them do it on their own things, and then flip to a completed one that you have done. And I've done this a lot, even where I've completed a thing, I've taken my phone, taken a picture, and loaded it up from that so that it looks complete. So those are just some different options, and I am all in. In fact, if you want to, and I would say this from my heart, I have educators all over the country that will submit to me or send either examples of what they've done, or they've actually sent chants that they have done. They've sent them to me. Any insights during this COVID creative, we're all in this together mode, please send them to me. Send them to Joe, and then Joe can forward them to me, or I'll be happy to give you my contact information. I'd love to be in dialogue with you. So there you go.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Tammy. One other question we've gotten here, and then I'll move into a time of resource sharing. When you teach diagramming, do you have the children make the distinction and mark the parts of speech and the parts of the sentence? Can you just marking the different parts of speech and different parts of the sentence?
Yes, so I'm going to go back to my diagram, and I'm going to talk this through, just because I feel either they came in late, or maybe I'm misunderstanding the sentence. So let's quickly go through this again. All right, if we're talking about parts of speech, this category right here, any word that shows up in this location in a diagram is your subject, okay? And it's important for now, it's not just a noun, though it is a noun, but this placement with the line that separates this from this is always your subject space. And I say that with you as you advanced into advanced grammar, or more so in intensive grammar, level 4. This can be a gerund phrase. Actually, in level 3, this could be a gerund. Swimming is fun. Okay, that could be my sentence. So this location, but swimming at the beach, or swimming at the beach is my subject. This position, so again, parts of speech, it's a noun. To identify this as a noun is not necessarily going to be helpful. It's my subject that's most important on the diagram. This is being my verb because it's placed between this. This line here is telling me that this is a direct object. Now in this case, this is a pronoun. I could identify this as a pronoun, but it's really behaving as a direct object. It's the object of this transitive verb. Same thing here, identifying this as a noun. I could identify this as a noun, this is a noun, as this is a noun if I wanted to, but to what avail? Its nounness is only important by how it's behaving. Here it's behaving as a subject. Here it's behaving as an object of the preposition. Here it's behaving as an object of the preposition. If I said the neighbors found the keys, if I had the word keys here, that's another noun. That's great, I found 4 nouns, but to what avail? I'd rather have them saying neighbors behaving as a subject, keys is behaving as a direct object, or the object that completes the meaning of a transitive verb, which is found. Backpack is my object of the preposition. My preposition is in. The functioning aspect of it. It's like identifying that is a preposition or as a pronoun. That's true. That is a pronoun. It's a relative pronoun. And my antecedent is that. The beauty of what I'm hearing you say in that question is you want to discuss more. And that's what you're going to be able to do. It's like that beautiful ceiling, okay? Once you have diagrammed and understood the structure of it, you can talk till the cows come home. Can we talk about what kind of backpack? Let's add an adjective. How did he find it? You know, secretively. The neighbor secretively found them. Ooh, that's showing me how he did it. You can add things to it or extract it or what have you. So I don't know if that helps. I hope that answered your question. So I think, I know one other question that often is asked, and I think, Joe, you're going to be talking about it in a second, but I've had educators, I've been doing workshops, and they said, why do I have to get the PDF? Like, I don't know where the quizzes are. That's probably one big thing. Where do the quizzes go? Because you have it in the teacher's edition, but it's not in the student edition. It's actually in the PDF. So the PDF has those additional poems, and it has additional, those fables and those additional sentences, as well as the quizzes. They're key. So that's kind of a tip off there. And so go ahead, share what you're going to do.
Yep, I'll take that introduction and run with it. So what Tammy is referring to, and I'll show you how to get here in a second, is these well-ordered language, extra practice, and assessments. Right there, it's a separate PDF download you'll find on our well-ordered language collection page on our website. It's on page 2, so you have to click through to get there. You can also find the songs and chants here too. It can be purchased separately instead of with the full program. On page 1 of our collection page, you see some of the more popular items like the program. I'll click into the well-ordered language level 1A program here. Every product page has a product photo, upper left-hand corner, that opens a PDF sampler. And PDF sampler simply shows you, gives you a snapshot of what's available in each program. For well-ordered language, it's the student edition, the teacher's edition, and the songs and chants, which can also be purchased separately. So one important thing to know is how to access that PDF sampler, because oftentimes the best way to distinguish where to place your student, we don't have placement tests for well-ordered language, but really the best way to gauge placement sometimes is to take a look at that PDF sampler, reviewing levels 1, 2, 3, 4, etc., to see which book is the best fit. Our schools that are with us today, I also want to make sure I point out this. At the top of every page, you'll see an evaluation copy request button. That'll open up our school evaluation request form. You can request a copy of well-ordered language. We'll get that to you, even if it's for review for the 2021-22 school year. That's no problem. We'll send you the book, and it's yours to keep and review. Back to the program page, or any of our well-ordered language product pages have this support tab. In the support tab, you'll find a couple great features. One is the well-ordered language scope and sequence, which I have opened up here. Gives you a breakdown levels 1 through 4. I won't scroll through the whole thing, but I know Tammy referenced that earlier, and we had a few people ask about that, but this document's incredibly helpful. Gives you a great, very comprehensive snapshot, and that's available under the support tab. I also have the well-ordered language 1A suggested schedule up, different lesson planning options, and there are suggested schedules for every book in the series available under the support tab. See a pretty robust breakdown right here. Tammy was discussing the different options earlier. It's important to pay attention to. Suggested schedule right there under the support tab. And then last but not least, this link right here, well-ordered language 1A sentence analysis for teachers. This is Tammy's favorite, and it should be. This is a great resource. We had Tammy in last year into our studio in Pennsylvania, and just had an incredible week. It was a week, right? Week, not
it
two.
Was a week. It was a week of all week. We did a lot.
Capital W week of filming some teacher training videos. So if you click here, it opens up this page right here. you'll see our nice well-ordered language introduction video. But if you go down to this teacher training button, it opens up teacher training for all 4 levels: level 1, level 2, level 3, and level 4. You'll see sentence analysis instruction for teachers. And then you can move right on to level 2A, so on and so forth, to review that teacher training instruction from Tammy. So great resource right there. We are right about at noon, so I'll start to wrap things up. Tammy, anything to add about the resources here, or any closing comments from you, things that we maybe haven't gone over?
Yeah. It was interesting because I am working with a school district right now, and one of the requirements, I should say, for the school in the fall is for whatever level the teacher is going to be teaching. If they're teaching level 1, to go those sites that Joe just referred to, those 8 chapters, just click through. They had their teachers watch all 8 videos before the school year. And the rationale was to see where you're going with your students and to hear the cadence of how the analysis works. If you're level 2, you do the same thing. There's 8 chapters, and it's only book A that's out there for you guys. So if you're doing 3 or what have you, but what it does, I thought that was such a wise decision, because so often, I don't know about you, but sometimes you're as doing your lesson plans and you're prepping and whatever, and you quickly that night before you're watching it for the first time, or you're flipping open the book. Sometimes you're racing in and you're just, I didn't read this carefully enough. I wish I would have known. So as a prep, just to take some time, you can actually put your earbuds in and walk around the kitchen and do whatever, but just to hear how it goes, all those 8, that would be my greatest recommendation if I were teaching it in the fall, to know where I was going with it. So that would be my words of wisdom, I guess, to end with. Or if any other questions there are.
Thank you, Tammy, for closing up shop with that. I will drop in email address for contact information and questions. If you had a question that you feel wasn't covered today, or you want to follow up with an additional question, or you have a very specific question that pertains to scheduling, grading for your specific school or homeschool group, info@classicalsubjects.com. Just dropped it in there. Pretty simple. Save that email address and contact us at any point.
Yeah.
Seen a lot of questions about intensive prep, so I'll close with a comment about that. We initially had a July release for intensive prep. We had a lot of summer releases planned. Unfortunately, due to COVID, those were pushed back to the fall, to the winter, and even further. Intensive prep is one of our top priorities, and it looks like an early to mid-fall release. I'm not allowed to say any specific dates yet, really, because we don't have one. But if you follow our newsletter or social media, you'll be tuned into the release for that. Tammy, you were going to say something about that?
Joe, I want to say, because some of the families or your schools are going, but I'm teaching it in the fall. I want to do this. How am I going to do it? I would highly recommend doing what I just recommend. Okay, so watch those videos. Will help you in that intensive grade. That's exactly what intensive prep is going to do. It's going to take you through those for you to be familiarized. I will even give more information on all of those training videos. It's worth its weight in gold to go through and hear more about it. You'll have the book in front of you, understand and see it. And that's actually probably in some respects would be very similar to what you're going to get with an intensive prep. We have different sentences or whatever, but the concept, again, it's conceptual learning. It's that categorical learning I want to get you front loaded with. So if you go through it or you have a group go through it with you, you will feel more, oh, I'm getting this now. I just see what I have to do. That's what you're going to do. So that would be my biggest thing, because don't be discouraged, but be encouraged. You got secret knowledge here, because some are looking at going, well, I can't do the intensive prep, but you've got secret knowledge. Start watching the videos and you'll be all set. How's that?
Right. Couldn't think of a better way to conclude things today. The link, I dropped it in a second time. I'll drop it in one more time for the teacher training videos. And you can click on that and maybe take your next step there and watch some of those videos today even. Tammy, thank you so much for your heart for not only grammar, but for students and for the classical renewal and for bringing truth and faith into the equation as well. Blessed and honored to have you with us today. To our participants, thank you for trusting us with your students and for your curiosity, your questions, and your willingness to prepare for this upcoming school year in the midst of a difficult year. We're right there beside you and eager to help you out as you continue in your journey too. So hope to see you for our writing webinar later today or some of our webinars on Thursday and Friday. Thanks for tuning in for our grammar webinar with Tammy, and have a great rest of your day.
Bye-bye, guys.